Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first information session for the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund. We are so excited to have so many early childhood educators join us today and appreciate everyone taking time out of their schedules, particularly on a Saturday, to join us to learn more about the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund. My name is Sarah Mead, and I am the Deputy Superintendent for Early Learning at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, commonly referred to as OSSE. Before we jump into the meeting, we want to take a few minutes to address some housekeeping details. I will pass things over to Julia Banks, who will share that information. Julia?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today. I am Julia Banks, and I am a Community Relations Specialist with the Division of Early Learning at OSSE. Before we get any further into today's agenda, I want to share a few important reminders and walk through some Zoom features. Please note, today's meeting will be recorded. The recording will be made available on the OSSE website, and for individuals who are unable to attend today's session or who wish to review it at a future time. The recording will be posted in the next week. We will be using Zoom webinar to conduct today's meeting. Because we are in webinar mode, all attendees are automatically muted and their video is off. There are a few Zoom engagement features we want to highlight that you might find useful during today's meeting. First are the language channels, which you can find by clicking the globe icon on the bar at the bottom of your screen and highlighted on this slide in orange. In addition to offering today's session in English, there are Spanish and Amharic language channels set up. Please click the icon and select the language you would like to tune into. If you're in the English call, you should still click the EN for English. I will now invite the moderators from the Spanish and Amharic language channels to provide instructions for individuals who would like to attend the session in one of those languages. First, we'll do Spanish.
Buenas tardes. Estamos ofreciendo el servicio de interpretación al español. Para seleccionar idioma, aparecerá un icono de forma de globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Selecciónelo, luego seleccione español. Si está en una tablet o un smartphone, haga clic en los tres puntos de la parte inferior de su pantalla, de la pantalla de Zoom, y luego interpretación de la lengua, y verá español. Si no selecciona el idioma, no podrá escuchar al intérprete hispanohablante cuando haga comentarios. Pondré estas instrucciones en el cuadro de chat.
ጤና ይስጥልኝ። የአማርኛ ትርጉም መከታተል ለምትፈልጉ ከዚህ በታች ግሎብ የሚለውን ይጫኑና አማሪክ የሚለውን ይምረጡ። አመሰግናለሁ።
Thank you. While folks are getting set up in their language channels, we'll walk through some additional Zoom features. We will use the chat feature highlighted on the screen with a green box throughout today's session to share links and other information with attendees for reference. Next is the Leave Meeting button highlighted on the screen in purple. If you need to leave the meeting early, you can click this button. And finally is the Q&A feature. If you have questions you'd like to ask during the session, please submit them using this feature. We'll go a little bit more detail on the Q&A feature on the next slide. So if you have not used the Q&A feature before, here is what it will look like on your screen. To submit a question, type it in the box seen here highlighted in red and click submit. Please note, we will do our best to answer all questions that come in. If you have questions that aren't addressed today, you can email them to aussie.delcommunications@dc.gov, and we will get back to you. In addition to the language channels, the slides we're presenting today are also available in Spanish and Amharic. We drop links in the chat at the top of the call to the slides in each language, but we will include them once more in the chat for folks to locate. These materials can also be found in the attachment section of the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund webpage on the Aussie website. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you will find the attachment section, and we'll drop a link to that webpage in the chat as well. So I'd like to now move into an introduction of today's speakers after that brief technical overview. Today, you will hear from Sarah Mead, Deputy Superintendent for Early Learning, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, also known as OSSI. And you will meet Katrina Van Gass, the CEO of AidKit. Thank you both to Sarah and Katrina for joining today. I know our attendees are excited to hear from you and learn more about the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund and how to apply for a supplemental payment. So the goals of this meeting today are to introduce early childhood educators in DC to the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund, including how the program will work in fiscal year 2022 and beyond, and to explain the application process for fiscal year 2022, including eligibility requirements, the timeline to apply, and available technical assistance. So let's look at a quick agenda for today. We will start out today's session by sharing how the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund came to be and how it will support early childhood educators in the upcoming years. Next, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the application for the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund for fiscal year 2022, and we'll include a live demo of the application from AidKit. And then we'll wrap up and share some next steps. In between these sections, we will answer your questions submitted in advance, as well as those that are submitted in the chat, or sorry, the Q&A box. Before we jump into our first agenda item though, we want to hear from you all. So in a moment, you will see a Zoom poll pop up on your screen. Please take a moment to respond to the poll and answer the following question. After hearing, we'll do question one, yes. Do you plan to apply for a supplemental payment? And the options are yes, no, and unsure. So we'll give folks a minute or so to respond. All right, we'll give folks another few seconds. It looks like 80% have already answered, and 82% of you are saying that you plan to apply. So that is great to hear. We're excited to share some more information. I'll end the poll and share the results. And with that, we will hand things back over to Deputy Superintendent for Early Learning, Sarah Mead.
Thank you so much, Julia. And hello again to everyone who's joined since the start of the call. It's exciting to be here today with so many people to share information about this exciting opportunity for our early childhood educators. I'm going to start by providing a little bit of background about what this fund is, how it came into be, and next steps, and then I will provide an overview of some of the eligibility criteria. Then I'll hand it over to the Aid Kit team, who will share more details about the application process. So how did this fund come into being? Last year, as part of the district's budget, the DC Council passed and Mayor Muriel Bowser signed legislation dedicating funds to increase pay for early childhood educators in the district. That legislation also created a task force to make recommendations for how the funds should be used. That task force put forth its recommendations in January and further recommendations in April of this year. In February, the DC Council passed the Early Childhood Educator Equitable Compensation Task Force Temporary Amendment Act, that is a mouthful, which authorized OSSI to distribute pay equity funds directly to early childhood educators in fiscal year 22. I'll tell you a little bit more about our plans for future years in a few minutes. OSSI then selected Aid Kit as our partner to administer the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund and to distribute funds to early childhood educators. We'll say more about how that process will work in a minute. Before we get into the details of fiscal year 22 distribution, though, I want to clarify that the funds we're talking about distributing now are just the starting point of a multi-year commitment the district has made to increasing pay for early childhood educators. This year, essentially from August to September of this year, we will be working through Aid Kit to distribute payments directly to early childhood educators. We're going to talk about that process today. However, that's not the end. In OSSI's fiscal year 2023, which runs from October of this year through September of 2023, we will continue to distribute payments to eligible early childhood educators. That means that if you receive funds in this payment distribution and then remain employed in an eligible role in a child development facility licensed by OSSI through September 2023, you can expect to receive additional payments coming your way. Then in fall of 2024, we will stop distributing payments directly. However, OSSI will transition to distributing money to child development facilities tied to an expectation that they will pay staff according to a compensation scale established by OSSI. That means that starting 2 years from now, roughly, while you will no longer receive direct payments from Aid Kit, if you remain employed in a child development facility that participates in this program, you'll instead see increased pay in your paycheck. We'll share a lot more information about that over the coming year, but today we're going to be talking about the payments that we're distributing now. I want to talk a little bit now about the eligibility criteria for receiving a payment. Oh, first I'll talk a little bit about what we've been working on. So as I said, legislation was passed to create this program in January. It's now August. What have we been doing in the meantime? We've established eligibility and payment policies, which I'll talk about. We've worked with Aid Kit to build the application that you'll use to access funds. We've put in place ways to distribute payments, both to individuals with bank accounts and to those who don't have bank accounts. We've developed information materials to help you get more information about the fund and how to apply. We've translated them into Spanish and Amharic. And we have been working closely with our child development facilities to update the staff data in the licensing data system that OSSI operates and make sure that that data is up to date so that we can distribute payments effectively. We've also been working in partnership with Aid Kit to train support specialists who who are available to help you complete the application if you need support. And we've been working with a variety of DC early childhood stakeholders to help spread the word. I can see those efforts are working because so many people are here with us today. So thank you so much to everyone who's helped us spread the word. And then finally, we've been planning for distribution in future years because it's important that everyone is aware that you will continue to receive payments if you remain employed in an eligible role in a licensed child development facility in the district. So now I'll talk a little bit about those eligibility and payment policies. There are 3 requirements that an individual must meet in order to qualify for these payments. First, you must be currently employed in a child development facility licensed by OSSI. And I'll talk in a minute about how we determine and define that. Second, you must be employed in an eligible role. We'll talk about what those roles are in a minute. And third, you must submit a supplemental payment request to AidKit. AidKit will share more information about that process on the call. So, how do we define currently employed in a child development facility licensed by OSSI? In order to be considered employed in a child development facility licensed by OSSI, an applicant must meet the following criteria. They must have been employed in the child development facility on or before May 16th, 2022. You must be employed at the time you submit your application, and you must be employed at the time funds are dispersed. Before AidKit sends the funds out, they will run a check against OSSI's licensing system to ensure that people are still employed before they receive those funds. If you changed jobs between licensed child development facilities in the district between May 16th and the time you apply, as long as your gap in employment was less than a month, you should still be eligible to receive these funds. In some cases, we may need to collect additional information from people who change jobs during this time period, but you should go ahead, submit the application, and if we need more information, we'll follow up once you've submitted the application. Finally, I want to note that staff in facilities that are not licensed by OSSI are not eligible for these funds. That means that individuals who work for the District of Columbia Public Schools or teachers in public charter schools, as well as folks who are nannies or otherwise work in facilities that are not licensed, are not eligible for these funds. Now I want to talk a little bit about the roles that are eligible for these funds. We will determine whether you're employed in an eligible role based on the staff type in the Division of Early Learning Licensing tool, which is our licensing data system. All licensed child development facilities are required by OSSI's licensing regulations to submit staff information in that licensing system, and that information is reviewed by OSSI licensing specialists on a regular basis and has been as part of this process. If your staff type in the Division of Early Learning Licensing tool is one of the following, you are eligible for this program: teacher, assistant teacher, associate caregiver in an expanded home provider, Montessori assistant teacher, or Montessori teacher. Not everyone who works in a child development facility is eligible for these programs. Some people that are not eligible include directors of child development facilities, lead teachers in pre-K enhancement and expansion classrooms. The reason for that is because those teachers are already required to be paid on par with the District of Columbia Public Schools salary schedule. Staff in out of school time programs are not eligible for this fund. Aides and substitutes, and I said before, teachers in the District of Columbia Public Schools and public charter schools. Your eligibility and payment amount are based on the staff type in the Division of Early Learning Licensing tool, regardless of what you may be called at work. We know sometimes facilities use a variety of different titles and names, but everyone has one of these staff types in the Division of Early Learning licensing tool, and that is what we will use to determine eligibility and payment amounts. Now I want to talk a little bit about the payment amounts that folks may be eligible for. So your payment amount will be determined based on two factors. One is the staff type that you work in, and the second is whether you are a full or a part-time worker. As I just said a minute ago, we'll determine your staff type using data in OSSI's licensing system. You will need to answer a question in the Aid Kit application to determine whether you are a full or a part-time employee. When you answer that question, please answer the question based on how you typically work. We know that this is a field where sometimes employment hours vary. Please base your answer on the way you typically work. If you typically work fewer than 10 hours a week in a child development facility licensed by OSSI, you will not be eligible for these funds. I'm not going to read the payment amounts, but I'll give folks a second to look at them before we move on to the next slide. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So Aid Kit will provide more details about the application process, but I want to give an overview of how supplemental payments will work this year. So Aid Kit will send a link to the application when it's time to apply via email and text message. If you don't get that link, don't worry. There will also be a link you can go to on the OSSI website that will direct you to the application. Early childhood educators will then apply for funds through the Aid Kit platform. Aid Kit will use OSSI licensing data to confirm your eligibility. If you are determined eligible and approved through Aid Kit's process, you will receive funds in about 3 to 4 weeks. If your eligibility can't be immediately confirmed, OSSI and Aid Kit will conduct additional reviews and may request information from you or your employer to determine your eligibility. You'll get communications indicating that if that's the case. There are 2 ways you can receive funds. Aid Kit will share more information about this, but you can receive funds either by direct deposit to your bank account or through a loaded debit card that you can either have mailed to your house or pick up at a site we'll share more information about later in the call. I will note the application is not yet available. It will be available very soon, and you can expect to receive communication from both Aid Kit and OSSI when the application is available. Finally, I just want to remind folks again that what we're talking about today really is the first step in a larger process. We're talking today about payments that will be distributed from August through September of this year. However, if you remain employed in an eligible role in a child development facility licensed by OSSI, you will continue to receive payments through September of 2023. We'll share more information about that next week. Then, as I shared previously, starting in fiscal year 24, OSSI will work in partnership with child development facilities to increase the salaries or wages they pay their staff. We'll share more information about that over the coming year, but we're very excited about all of these opportunities to make sure that our early childhood educators are getting pay that reflects the incredible value of the work you do, the skills and commitment that you bring to the work that you're doing, and the great importance of this work to the district, to our families, to our businesses, to our ability to be a great place for kids and families. Thank you so much for your work. We're very excited to begin this process of distributing funds to you. Now, I think we can pause and respond to a few questions, Julia, is that right?
That's right. Thank you, Sarah. So we're going to pause here and address some of the questions we either received before today's session or that we're seeing pop up in the Q&A. So first question for you, Sarah, is will this money be taxed?
Yes, I know that is a question on many people's minds. So these supplemental payments are subject to both state and federal taxes. That's the advice that we've received from various experts on this topic. Unlike your paycheck, state and federal taxes will not be withheld from the pay supplement distributed through this program. That means that you will need to report the income when filing your state or federal taxes, and you may need to pay additional tax on these funds when you file your 2022 taxes. AidKit will provide documentation that early childhood educators who receive funds will need to submit their 2022 taxes, but I want to repeat this, they will not be withholding state or federal taxes. OSSI cannot provide personal tax advice to you. However, if you are concerned about tax implications, you may wish to consult with an accountant or other tax expert, or to save a portion of the funds that you receive in case you need to pay additional taxes in the future. There are a number of organizations in the district that do provide free tax filing assistance to individuals, and typically that happens between January and April. We will make sure to share some information about those resources with folks in that January through April time period.
Thank you. Our next question, will the payments be split into installments or will it be one lump sum?
So for fiscal year 2022, which is what we're talking about today, early childhood educators who are approved to receive payment will receive it in one lump sum based on your staff type and your employment status. We do anticipate that for fiscal year 23, which starts in October, payments will be distributed across the course of the year rather than in one lump sum. Again, we'll share more information about that next week.
Thank you. Will early childhood educators receive a notice to let them know they qualify for funds?
Yes. If your information in the Division of Early Learning Licensing Tool, OSSI's licensing data system, indicates you're eligible for a supplemental payment and your employer has updated the information in the system to include your email address and or your cell phone number, you will receive an email or text message from AidKit with information on how to apply for the payment. Early educators who do not receive a notification directly from AidKit will still be able to access the application, but their information will need to be verified before payment can be dispersed. So do not worry if you do not get that email or text message. That does not mean that you are not eligible for these funds. Please go ahead, come to the OSSI website, fill out the application, and if we need more information from you to verify your eligibility, the OSSI or AidKit team will follow up on that.
So how will someone know if they are eligible for a supplemental payment?
So the best way to see if you're eligible for a supplemental payment is by looking at the eligibility criteria. I walked through the criteria earlier, but we'll also drop a link in the chat to where you can find that eligibility policy. And we have that information available in English, Spanish, and Amharic. I will also note that if you think you are eligible, you can go ahead and apply, and we'll determine through the process if you are eligible or not. So if you're in doubt, go ahead and apply, please.
If an early childhood educator is employed in a child development facility in DC, licensed by OSSI, but then starts working at a different facility, also licensed by OSSI, are they still eligible for a supplemental payment through the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund in fiscal year 2022?
Thanks for that question. We do get the question a lot. So as I said previously, in order to receive a supplemental payment, you must be currently employed in a child development facility in an eligible role. Your start date must have been on or before May 16th, 2022. You must be employed at the time you submit your application and at the time funds are dispersed. If you take a job in an eligible role in another child development facility licensed by OSSI between May 16th and the time your payment is dispersed, you will still be eligible to receive a supplemental payment as long as your gap in employment was less than a month, but it's possible we may need to get more information from you or your employer as part of that process. Go ahead and submit the application, and if we need more information from you, AidKit or OSSI will follow up on that. If you change jobs and are no longer employed in an eligible role in a child development facility licensed by OSSI, you will not be eligible to receive a supplemental payment if you move to a job that is not eligible or not in a child development facility. I do want to add, since this is another question we're getting, if you started working in child development facility after May 16th and do not qualify for this distribution of funds, but you continue working in a licensed child development facility in an eligible role, you may be eligible for the payments that will begin after October of 2022. So I just want to give hope to people who may not be eligible for this payment. If you continue working in the roles you're in that are eligible in licensed child development facilities, there will be additional payments and you may qualify for them.
Another question we're getting a good bit is around credentials. So are early childhood educators required to meet specific education requirements, for instance, having a child development associate or associate's degree in order to receive a supplemental payment?
So to receive a supplemental payment, you must meet those eligibility criteria that I talked about earlier. Being currently employed in a child development facility licensed by OSSI, being employed in an eligible role, and submitting your application through AidKit. Your staff type in the Division of Early Learning Licensing System is based on your responsibilities at the facility where you're employed and your qualifications. For example, an individual in an assistant teacher role must carry out the responsibilities that reflect an assistant teacher role as defined in licensing regulations and have the credentials that are required for the role as of the date of the application. There are additional increased credential requirements that will be in effect in December of 2023. We've been communicating with the early childhood workforce about those and are providing a variety of supports to help individuals meet those credentials. However, you do not need to meet those new credentials that become effective in December of 2023 in order to receive a payment for FY22. So again, if you meet the credentials for your current role that are currently in place, you will be eligible to receive this payment.
Great. And I think the final question that we'll have for this portion before moving on to our presentation from AidKit is, are there any circumstances in which an individual who receives a supplemental payment would have to return the funds?
Thanks for that question. So we are working very closely with AidKit to try to minimize any inappropriate distribution of funds through this program. It is a significant amount of public money, so it's very important that the funds are distributed to eligible individuals and only to eligible individuals. However, if it happens that an individual receives a disallowed payment, then they must return those funds. Disallowed payments include payments that would be dispersed to somebody who is not actually an eligible individual, provided based on incorrect, intentionally misleading, or fraudulent information. That includes fraudulent information provided by an employer to the Division of Early Learning Licensing System, or by an early educator to the AidKit platform, or payments that are considered unlawful by any district or federal law. Some of the examples of potentially disallowed payments may include if an applicant uses another individual's information to receive a payment they are not actually eligible for, if an applicant who does not actually meet eligibility criteria to receive funds enters inaccurate information in their application in order to receive payment, if an applicant provides inaccurate information regarding their full or part-time employment status in order to receive a payment or a larger payment than they would otherwise receive. In addition, if a child development facility submits licensing records for non-existent staff members or individuals who do not actually work in the facility in the Division of Early Learning Licensing System in order to enable the facility or ineligible individuals to receive a payment, that would also be a disallowed payment. OSSI and AidKit are taking steps to identify potentially disallowed payments. That will include reviewing application data for patterns that may indicate false applications, audits of early childhood educator pay equity fund payments, spot reviews of facility staff records, and other appropriate actions to ensure program integrity. OSSI will investigate all potential disallowed payments. Individuals who receive a disallowed payment, including early childhood educators, are required to return the funds they received in error. If a child development facility is determined to have committed fraud by intentionally providing misleading, fabricated, or inaccurate information, OSSI may refer the matter to the Office of the Attorney General for prosecution. We do take this very seriously. We want all eligible individuals to receive the funds they're eligible for, but we will pursue any matter of fraud or intentionally providing incorrect information in order to gain a payment. More information on disallowed payments and the recoupment of disallowed payments will be published by OSSI next week.
Thank you, Sarah. And that will wrap up our first Q&A portion. I think that we'll now move on in our agenda to the nuts and bolts of applying for a supplemental payment. And for that, I will hand things over to our friends at AidKit.
Great. Thanks so much, Julia and Sarah. I am Katrina. It's really great to be here with so many people tuning in on this call today. We are super excited to be launching this application next week. So in this section, I'm going to give a quick overview of AidKit, and then I will talk about how to apply and the required documents and information that you need in the application process. And then I will do a quick demo to preview some parts of the application. And then I'll talk about our support and technical assistance that we provide. All right. So a little bit about us. We are a technology platform, and our mission is to enable programs to deliver cash assistance and guaranteed income programs effectively and efficiently. And we really believe that financial assistance can be one of the most effective and empowering ways to address a wide range of inequities and emergencies. And to share a little bit about our roots, because I think it's important in how we carry ourselves and how we think about supporting programs. We originated in 2020 from a program we created called Left Behind Workers Fund, which was in response to the COVID pandemic to get direct cash assistance out to the undocumented population in Colorado who did not have access to federal stimulus checks and unemployment insurance. And we were able to effectively distribute over $38 million to over 25,000 undocumented workers during a really challenging time. And it was from the success of this program that we decided to spin out and apply our administration tool to other programs across the country that were trying to get direct cash assistance out to other populations. And so we have made cash assistance accessible for populations that are typically left behind, and we are really, really excited to be partnering with OSSI on this program. And just to give a little context of what our role is and what we do to support these cash assistance programs, like I said before, we are an end-to-end platform. So we are actually hosting the application on AidKit. We are doing the verification and review checks to confirm eligibility. We are sending the payments to approved applicants, and we have an option for both banked and unbanked people, which was the ACH direct deposit if you have a bank account. And if you don't have a bank account, we have a debit card that we can either mail to you or you can pick up. And then we offer technical support if you have any questions while completing the application. And you can go to the next slide. So we have grown very quickly over the past 2 years since we started, and we've expanded outside of Colorado, and now we are supporting over 14 programs across the country. For different populations, we have programs for refugees, for undocumented workers, like I already talked about, for the unhoused community, and we have over 3 programs for childcare providers, which is why we are really, really thrilled and honored to be partnering with Aussie in this community for this Early Childhood Educators Pay Equity Fund, because this is a population that we've been putting a lot of emphasis and focus on. One thing that I wanted to share with everyone today that's really important to AidKit and how we think about designing programs is this balance between inclusion and integrity. So we want to make sure that how we are administering a program is really inclusive, and that cash assistance is actually reaching the people who are typically excluded. So we do a lot of work to make sure that the application can be offered in multiple languages and that it's accessible for people with low tech literacy and high tech literacy, and having a really user-friendly interface. Another big value for us is integrity and making sure that our programs are reaching people who are eligible and qualified for the funds. So we have integrated a lot of different fraud protections and real-time validation to make sure that the funds are getting to the people that qualify for them. And so it's this constant balance of how do we make sure that a program is inclusive while also having integrity. And this allows us to really build a foundation of trust with the partners that we work with and the community that we're getting direct cash assistance out to. All right, so now I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into the application process itself and talk about how to apply. So like Sarah mentioned before, there's really 2 different entry points for the application. One is an invite link, and this is something that AidKit will send out through text message and or email, depending on what folks have on file on the licensing database, to all of the eligible early childhood educators that are currently in the Aussie licensing database. That's one entry point. The other is the Aussie website itself. So we will have an application link that will be hosted on an Aussie webpage for individuals to apply that might not have received the direct link through AidKit. And so really either of these entry points is completely fine. And we want to make sure that everyone that is eligible is able to apply for this program. And the application can be completed using a computer or a smartphone. So you can apply on both your mobile device or computer, whatever you prefer. And we'll have the application available in English, Amharic, and Spanish. And the application must be submitted by 5 p.m. on September 20th, 2022. So we need to receive all applications by that date. So I wanted to call that out while we have so many people on this call that will likely be applying. So make sure to get your applications in by then. All right, great. This is a visual. I will show this when I do the live demo, but for everyone's preview, this is to access the application in different languages. On our actual application, we have a toggle where you can choose whether you want to view everything in English, Spanish, or Amharic, and it will immediately translate everything into that language. So you can toggle back and forth and choose whatever language you feel most comfortable filling the application out. All right. So getting into the required documents, this is a really important slide. And especially while we have so many people on the call, I wanted to review what are the documents and information that you need to have to complete the application. So these are, I'll go through each of these. The first is a government issued photo ID, and this can be from the US or foreign. And we need this to help us verify your identity. One thing I want to note is that the IDs can be expired. So we do accept expired IDs. It's just really important that we do have a government issued photo ID. And again, it is okay if the expiration date is passed. All right, the other bullet point is a headshot or selfie. So this is a current photo that you have, and we will ask you to upload this. The next is your child development facility license number. And we also provide a link so you can look that up very easily, and you'll be asked in the application to input that. The other piece of information is around, depending on what payment method you choose. So as I mentioned, we do have 2 different payment methods, either a direct deposit to your bank account or a debit card that you can pick up in person or we can mail to you. If you do choose the direct deposit to your bank account, you'll be asked to provide some of the bank information, like your bank account number, the routing number, and those are really the two key pieces of information. And so making sure that you have this available will help you go through the application more smoothly. The other is your social security number or ITIN number. And then the last one is a complete and signed W-9 form. And one thing to note is on the application itself, we do provide a link to a W-9 form that you can download and fill out on the computer and upload, or you can download and fill it out by hand and upload by taking a picture or uploading on your computer. So we give very clear instructions on how to fill out the W-9 form and various ways you can upload that. And that is really important because completing the W-9 and having all of these documents will really help your application go through a smoother verification and approval process. If we are missing one of these documents, it could cause some delay in us being able to verify your application. So I think it's really important to really look at this list and get everything ready so that you can have the smoothest process while filling out the application. All right, great. Let's get into a preview of the application itself, and I will go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second. All right. Great. So in this demo session today, I'm going to give a preview of the application layout, the overall navigation of how to move through the application, and then I will talk about each of the sections that we have on the application and how to complete them and then submit the application. We don't have time to go through a full walkthrough of the application, but we will do that in a future session. All right, so this is the application landing page. And what I wanted to point out here was that this is where the toggle is. You can see it on the right-hand side. So you could switch between, this is on English now, you could go to Spanish. It updates all of the content into Spanish or Amharic. And you can always go back and forth if that makes it easier. The other thing I wanted to point out is that this can be done on your computer or a smartphone. So I'll move it in here so you can see what the layout looks like on a mobile device. So it's very user-friendly. So here you still have the language toggle and all of the sections are shown right there. And then this is the progress bar is on the top so you can follow along. And as you complete each section, this will get filled out. I'll go back to the computer desktop version for this, for the purpose of the rest of this demo. All right, so this is the landing page. On this page, you'll see some basic information about the program and the application. Just gonna scroll. So you'll be able to read all of this in detail once this launches. And then down here, we have frequently asked questions. And we have a lot of questions that some of you may have when starting this application with answers laid out here. So you can go through these. It probably will answer a lot of your questions and look at the responses by clicking that, click to show, and then it expands and provides the response. So just to show you how many are on here, we won't go through all of them today. But in terms of then moving through and navigating through the application, you'll be able to click to the next section down here, or always up here, you can move to the next section. How the application works is it won't let you proceed to a new section until you have completed everything. And this really ensures that when you submit your application to AidKit, it means that you have completed every section that is required. So this is pre-filled out, so that's why all of the sections are showing right now, but for you, you will only see the new section once you have completed the previous section. So high level, there are 8 sections that are in this application. And I will go through each of them and point out some tips when completing them. So the first one is the About You section. This is the first section where you're completing information in the application. This is really about getting your contact information. One thing I do want to point out is we have a question that asks you what language do you prefer AidKit uses to text message or email you. So here is where we give you, again, the option to let us know what's your preferred language. If you choose Spanish, that means every time we send you a notification, it will be in Spanish. All right, you can see we ask cell phone, email, date of birth, and last 4 digits of social security number. Next, I'm going to go to the next section, which is the demographic section. This is a really short section. We just have 4 different questions, basic questions around demographic information. All right, next I'll go to the employment section. Here's where we ask some detailed information about your employment history. And I know, again, I can't go through every single question on this demo, so I'm just more giving high level so everyone understands once this application launches next week, what to expect. Okay, I'll go next to the verification section. The verification section is where we ask you to upload a government photo ID and a selfie or headshot of yourself. In this section, we do list examples of what acceptable government IDs could be. And then here's where you would upload the ID and upload the selfie or headshot. One thing I want to point out about uploading documents is we try to make this as simple and easy for everyone. So we have a few different options of how you can upload. So if doing this on your mobile device, you can upload just from your photos. So what I do when filling these out is I'll just take a photo of my driver's license or passport. And while I'm filling out the application, it allows me to go to my photos. I can select that, and then it uploads into the application itself. The other option is you can do it from your computer. So if you have a saved file or photo on your computer of your ID, you can upload it directly from your computer. All right, so going to move on to the next section, which is around payments. So here is where you will decide what payment method you want to choose. So we have two different payment methods, the bank direct deposit or the debit card. So here's where you'll fill out that information. We do provide an example of where you can find your bank account number and bank routing number. So there's a few different ways you can find that information, and we provide a sample picture of a check so you can see where you can find it there, or you can always call your bank or look at a bank statement that you have. One thing I do want to call out is that if you do have a bank account, that is the most secure way to secure and quickest way to receive the supplemental payment. So I would encourage you to choose the direct bank account option. If you do have a bank account, I think that is a great option. If you don't have a bank account, we do have the prepaid debit card option. And for this, you can decide if you want to pick it up in person. And we do have a few centralized locations that will be distributing the debit cards, or you can have us ship it to you to your address, and you input your address here. We also do make sure that the debit card is also a secure option. We make sure that before we actually load any funds onto the debit card, that we verify that it's you and that you're the one who has the debit card. So both options are safe and secure, but if you do have a bank account, I would recommend that is probably the preferred option. All right, next is the W-9 form. And just to preview this for everyone, here is where we do have instructions on how to submit your W-9 form. We provide a link so that you can download the W-9 form if you don't already have one and fill it out electronically or by hand. One thing that we have added to make this as clear for everyone is we have embedded a picture of the W-9 form and highlighted every field that is required to fill out. This is really important that everyone very closely reads the instructions and looks at this picture so that you make sure when you submit your W-9 that everything is completed and correct. All right, we'll keep going. And so the final section is just reviewing and making sure that everything that you have put into the application is correct. We do show a few fields here. And so looking over these, making sure your date of birth is correct, the phone number you gave an email, the mailing address, the employment status. And if you do want to change something in the application, at any time, you can go back to any section. So I could go back to the payment option and choose a different payment method. So before you submit the application, you can go back and edit any section. And one thing to point out is if you leave your computer and because you need another day to find your ID, you can always go back on the link and it will pull up your application. So as you move through this, everything is saving in real time. The minute you fill out an answer, we save it and it's attached to your record. So you don't have to worry about leaving and everything being deleted. All your work will be saved. All right, so the final step is confirming everything's correct and submitting. So once you submit, you will see this message pop up, and this lets you know that your application has been received by AidKit. We will also send you a notification through email and text message letting you know that your application has been received and that we will get back to you within 10 business days of next steps. All right, and that completes the demo for today. Let me go
Thank you,
back.
Katrina. That was a really helpful walkthrough. We're going to move into some more questions now. Oh, wait, actually, I'll let you go through what happens next.
Okay, great. Yeah, so what happens after I submit my application? So after you submit, you'll receive the confirmation text, an email from AidKit, and following that, AidKit will review your application for completeness to verify your eligibility. And we will notify you within 10 days that your application has been approved for payment. If we aren't able to verify your information, we will also notify you to let you know what are the next steps in the application process. And in terms of timing, if you are approved, you can expect to receive the supplemental payment in 3 to 4 weeks after your application has been approved. And if you do have any questions while you're filling out the application, you can reach out to our support team, and we are more than happy to assist you. So we have a few different ways you can reach out. We have an email that you can reach out to, or you can call and leave a voicemail and someone will get back to you. So we will be supporting applicants through email and by phone. And we do have support specialists that are able to support in English, Spanish, and Amharic. All right, I think that's it, Julia. So
Yeah,
we can get to
now
any
we will
other
move it-
questions.
Now we will move into the Q&A.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so the first question, as you can imagine, folks are really excited and want to complete the application. So
Yep.
when will the application launch? When can they complete it?
The application will launch next week, and we will be notifying everyone once the application launches.
Great. Our next question, if I don't have a bank account, how can I receive my payment?
Yeah, so great question. We have a prepaid debit card option. And so on the application, you would choose a prepaid debit card, and then you can either pick that up in person or we will directly mail it to you.
Great. Some folks are asking about the headshot and selfies. Why is that included in the application?
Yeah, good question. So it's really important for us to ensure that all eligible applicants receive their supplemental payments in a safe and timely manner. And we ask that you upload a headshot or selfie to verify your identity to ensure that we are sending the supplemental payment to the correct individuals. So it really helps us in the verification process.
And similarly, on another part that is included in the application, the photo ID. So what types of IDs are acceptable?
Yeah, so it is required to have a government issued photo ID. So examples of that could be a state driver's license from any state, a foreign driver's license, a passport. It could be a US passport or a foreign passport, or any other country government issued ID.
Great. And I might invite Sarah back to the Q&A as well for just some other questions. some related to the Division of Early Learning licensing tool. So if someone is worried that their employer hasn't updated the information in the OSSI system, will they still be able to apply for a payment?
So that's a great question. You should go ahead and apply for a payment if you believe that you are eligible. There is a requirement for all facilities to have all their staff listed in the Division of Early Learning licensing tool. That's a licensing requirement, and it is something that we enforce to ensure that other requirements not related to this payment program are being met, such as that staff meet the qualifications for their role, that the facility has enough staff employed to meet our licensing requirements, and that staff have completed appropriate background checks. So there are other reasons that facilities have to update this data, and it is checked on a regular basis. However, we know that there are always sometimes when things that are supposed to happen don't happen exactly the way they should. If you submit an application and it turns out that your information is not in the licensing system, OSSI will first contact your employer to find out if you're employed or not and direct them to update the information. And then if you are denied and you believe that you were unfairly denied, you will have an opportunity to submit an appeal and provide your own evidence of the fact that you are employed in a child development facility licensed by OSSI. Again, we have been working quite a bit with child development facilities to get data updated, to support facilities in updating the data. So our hope is that for most people, this process will be very smooth, but there are options to deal with exceptions where that doesn't work exactly the way it should. And so please do not worry extensively before you submit the application. Go ahead and submit it, and we'll follow up with you if there's anything that needs additional information.
Thank you, Sarah. Another question we've gotten, who submits the application? Is it the employer who needs to complete the application, or does the early childhood educator need to complete their own application?
If you are an eligible early childhood educator, you must submit your own application to AidKit. If your employer tells you they submitted their application, that is not possible. They did not do that. And there will be a few options where some of our community partners or folks who are working with AidKit can support you in completing the application. Katrina can share a little bit more information about that, but the application has not launched yet. So no one has submitted an application on your behalf already, and you do need to submit your own application or work with a specific partner that Katrina can share information about to submit your own application.
Great. And quickly on eligibility, are DCPS early childhood educators able to receive a supplemental payment?
No, employees of District of Columbia Public Schools are not eligible for this program. Only staff in child development facilities licensed by OSSI are eligible for this program.
Okay. Katrina, I have another question that will be for you. How will an early childhood educator know if their application has been approved?
Yeah, so everyone who submits an application will receive an email or text message with updates on the status of their application throughout the entire process. So if your application is approved, you will receive a notification from AidKit through text message and or email with the letting you know that you have been approved for payment and with instructions on how you'll receive your payment.
And after an application is approved, how long will it take for an early childhood educator to receive that payment?
So in most cases, it will take 3 to 4 weeks to receive the payment after your application has been approved by AidKit.
And if your application is denied, but you think that you're eligible to receive a payment, what should you do?
There will be a process for submitting an appeal. Those appeals will be sent to OSSI. There is a dedicated email address we'll be using to take those appeals. That will also be the address for anyone who wants to report an improper payment to us as well. We'll be sharing information on that next week.
Great. All right, I think that we will move into the next portion of our call now. Thank you, Katrina and Sarah, for answering those questions. I know we have a lot of questions coming in. For those that we couldn't get to, please feel free to reach out to Aussie at an email address that we have, which is aussie.delcommunications@dc.gov. We'll make sure that's dropped in the chat. You can also find that email address on the webpage we have for the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund. But now we are going to move into a quick game of true or false to see how your understanding of the program is. So to participate, click the link in the chat box to the Mentimeter tool. We'll drop that in now. After you click that link, you'll be directed to a page where you can find 5 statements about the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund and the application process. After reading each statement, indicate whether they are true or false. Your responses will be kept anonymous and you won't be penalized if you get any wrong answers. So the statements are, you can use either a social security number or individual taxpayer identification number to complete your application. True or false. Second statement is, you can only receive a supplemental payment if via direct bank deposit. Just true or false. The next statement, the application closes at 5 p.m. on September 20th, 2022. The fourth statement, you can only apply for a supplemental payment if your employer has updated your staff information in the Division of Early Learning Licensing tool before the application launches. And finally, the last statement here, you can only apply for a supplemental payment if you receive an email and or text message directly from AidKit inviting you to apply. So we'll give folks a few more seconds to complete their or select their answers. All right, so let's go through the answers. So for question 1, you can either use a social security number or individual taxpayer identification number to complete your application. That is true. You may use either an SSN or an ITIN in the application process. On the second statement, you can only receive a supplemental payment via direct bank deposit. That is false. You can receive a supplemental payment via direct bank deposit, or you can select to receive a prepaid debit card. So those will be your 2 options when completing the application. For the third, the application closes at 5 p.m. on September 20th, 2022. That is true. So everyone, please, when the application launches, we encourage you to complete it as soon as you can, but get those applications in before 5 p.m. on September 20th. The next statement, you can only apply for a supplemental payment if your employer has updated your staff record in DELT before the application launches. That is false. You may still apply if your record in DELT hasn't been updated by your employer. However, when you're going through the application, it will need to go be verified through your employer, so it might take a little more steps. And then finally, you can only apply for a supplemental payment if you receive an email and or text message directly from AidKit inviting you to apply. That is false. The application will be posted on the Aussie website. In most cases, eligible early childhood educators will receive an email and or text message as long as that information has been updated in the Division of Early Learning Licensing tool by your employer. If you don't receive an email or text message directly from AidKit, do not worry. You will be able to access the application and complete it still. And with that, I want to thank everyone who participated in our fun game of True or False. And to close out, I will hand things back over to Deputy Superintendent for Early Learning, Sarah Mead.
Thank you so much, Julia, and thank you to Katrina for sharing those updates and information. And thank you to everyone else who has joined the conversation today. As we close, we want to leave you with a few suggested next steps and highlight some materials that we shared in the chat. So next steps. First, be on the lookout for email and text message notifications from OSSI and AidKit. You should expect to receive those sometime next week. And again, if you do not receive them, you can always go to the OSSI website to look for updates. Second, you might want to go ahead and start gathering the following information so that you are prepared to complete the application when it opens: a government issued photo ID, a headshot or selfie, your child development facility license number, which is posted on the license that it must be posted in your facility, or you can find it through a list of child development facilities on the OSSI website, and we should be able to share that link as well. Payment information. So if you want to receive via bank deposit, get together that account number and routing number so you can provide that information, and your social security number or ITIN. Second or third, visit the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund webpage. We've included the link on the slide here. That link includes all of the documents and information about the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund, and will be where we'll also post the recording of this session once that recording is available. It will also be where the link to the application will be once it's available. So that's a good place to go to look for information. And then fourth, register for the next virtual information session from 6 to 7:30 p.m. on August 23rd. That will be an opportunity for us to provide additional support for folks in navigating the application, answer questions that people have after the application is released, and continue to answer your questions. As a reminder, you can always email your questions to ossi.delcommunications@dc.gov. That's the site for all questions. Please, before doing that, also though, look at our frequently asked questions document, which you can find on that OSSI Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund webpage. That includes many of the questions that came up in today's call, as well as other questions that we've received from child development facility staff and program leaders. So it's a really great resource because your question may already be answered there. We've tried to answer as many questions as we could during this call. Apologies if we did not get to yours. You can follow up with us, and in some cases, we may be following up with you about specific individual questions that may not be appropriate for the whole group. Thank you again for joining this call. Thank you for the incredible work that all of you are doing to support children and families in the district. I believe that before we close out, we have one final Zoom poll. Is that correct, Julia?
That is correct. So folks will see a Zoom poll pop up on their screen. So please feel free to answer the question. After hearing the information presented today, do you plan on applying for a supplemental payment? And the options are yes, no, and unsure. And we'll give folks a few moments to submit their answer. All right, thank you to everyone who just participated in our poll and who joined us today. I will hand things back to you, Sarah, for official closing.
All right, are we able to see the poll results, Julia? Okay. All right, that's exciting to see that so many of you are now planning to apply for the payment, and it sounds like we may have been able to answer some questions since fewer folks are unsure now. So thank you. Thank you again for attending today's session. I want to again remind folks, for more information, please visit the Early Childhood Educator Pay Equity Fund website on OSSI's website. That's where you can find all the resources we discussed today, the recording of this call, and the link to the application when it's live. And again, if you have questions, please email them to ossi.delcommunications@dc.gov. Thank you again for joining us this morning, giving up a part of your Saturday. We are so excited to be able to start distributing these payments to our early childhood educators. Thank you.